We're now joined by SCSU geologist Tom Rockwell and the UT's Gary Robbins, and we're to talk about today's moving in and shaking. Hi guys.
How you doing?
Welcome to Primetime. Thank you for making time for us.
That's great.
Okay, so what do you think about this? Because honestly, for me, I grew up in California. We get shakes like this all the time, and it didn't even faze me. And my house is retrofitted to earthquakes, so it's like I didn't even feel it move, to be honest.
I felt it and didn't give it a second thought until Gary called me. And he doesn't call me unless he considers it something significant. So that was my first clue.
Well, the media did. It's that all of the media is covering it. So, right. And I think that it even has, it's scary for people who haven't, if they weren't raised here in California and they hear about the earthquakes, because that's the one thing we have, right? Wildfires and earthquakes. So it makes people nervous. So what is your take on this whole?
Well, this is an interesting earthquake because this follows 3 other similar sized earthquakes in the same area. And these are occurring in the San Jacinto fault zone along a section of fault that we know moves in large earthquakes every 200 to 220 years. And the last earthquake was November 22nd, 1800. That's when we think it last moved. So it's been over 210 years. So we're getting into that window where we can expect another earthquake at some point in the near future. And this earthquake is similar to ones that happened in 2001, 2005, 2010, and now one in 2013. And there's no other earthquakes going back several decades, for more than a half a century, that are like this.
Let me ask you, and that's amazing that you were able to put all that together, but back 200 years ago, how big was that earthquake?
7.3.
So 7.3 could really do some damage.
It ruptured the fault from the Anza-Borrego Desert to at least Hemet, and it could have been farther.
So Tom, this is on the San Jacinto.
Correct.
Could you tell people where the San Jacinto fault is?
The San Jacinto fault is what we call the western branch of the San Andreas Fault. It runs from right where the 215 goes up through Cajon Pass.
We have a map up there if you want to take a look at that.
It runs all the way down to Clark Lake and the Anza-Borrego Desert, that area. So it runs for, the whole zone runs for about 250 kilometers, but this particular fault runs for a minimum of 115, 120 kilometers, or about 80 miles. And it could rupture in a single earthquake.
Well, see, and I grew up near the San Andreas Fault, so we were always, since I was a little girl, well, the big one's coming, the big one's coming, the big one's coming.
Yep.
Never experienced the big one coming. It could happen at any time, right? But you're saying that there is kind of a timetable here that...
What we've done is we've studied how often earthquakes, large earthquakes, occur on these major faults. And the reason people keep on keying in on the southern San Andreas is because it produces earthquakes in the 7 to 8 range every 200, 250 years, and it's been 300 years. So we're all going... We're
overdue.
We're overdue, yeah.
It's like a pregnant lady. There's a lot of pressure building.
My colleague from Caltech, Carrie C., used to say that San Andreas is 10 months pregnant.
Right, see, that's what I think.
Exactly.
She's ready to burst. But aren't having these smaller earthquakes good because it releases some of the energy?
They release about 1%.
It's like having gas build up or something.
Yeah, it really doesn't do much at all. No, the big energy is released in these large earthquakes.
Tom, could you give us some help in understanding what a 7.3, if we had a real large earthquake on the San Jacinto, what might that mean to San Diego County? So,
well,
degree of shaking,
the northeastern part of the county, this fault goes right through it, right?
Yes.
So that area is going to be severely shaken.
Northeastern, we're talking...
Anza. Yeah. That's in the northern,
Right.
And where does it end?
Well, the fault would rupture potentially from the Anza-Borrego Desert all the way to Hemet, or even farther north. So it would produce strong shaking over a very large area. But downtown San Diego, we're pretty far from that fault.
Yeah.
So we don't really expect much direct damage, although it would be probably stronger than we felt in the 2010 Easter Day earthquake.
Right. Well, what if we were in a community like Escondido or in Fallbrook or Carlsbad, places in North County?
They're closer.
They're closer.
Yeah. The closer you are, the stronger the shaking.
So let me ask you, the buildings that have been retrofitted for earthquakes when the new law passed, would they be okay? I mean, I think a lot of the old buildings could suffer some damage, but we're not talking catastrophic damage, are we?
The modern structures should do fine. Old retrofitted buildings should also do fine if they're retrofitted for large earthquakes. It's the unreinforced masonry structures that are not retrofitted, that are close to the earthquake source. Those are the ones that are going to have problems. And you probably have quite a few of those still existing in Riverside, and San Bernardino, and these areas that were developed early.
Right.
You talked this morning, or excuse me, you talked earlier about the series of earthquakes in this general area. But does that necessarily mean it will lead to something? Because we still don't have a signal or a precursor that says there is something coming.
Correct. So we don't know if this will be followed or not by a larger earthquake. About 5% of earthquakes in California of this magnitude range, in the magnitude 5-ish range, are followed by larger earthquakes. And in this case, there was a 4.7 and two 4.6 earthquakes. So cumulatively, they're just seconds apart, and they're cumulatively we're close to a magnitude 5, and I think that's why the USGS initially called it a 5.2, and then said, wait a minute, these are 3 separate earthquakes, a few seconds apart. But the bottom line is, when you have an earthquake in this magnitude category, it's commonly being 5% of the time. 1 in 20 is followed by a larger earthquake.
And as of to date, there's no way to predict earthquakes. They're getting closer, but still there's no way to.
That's correct.
Okay.
And it's so sad because another natural disasters, like if there's a hurricane coming or a tornado.
Well, we can see the hurricane coming. You can track that.
Oh, so sad.
Well, I was looking at this list. This is from the USGS. People who felt the earthquake can click on it and say, I felt the earthquake, and it gives your zip code. And I was looking through it, and a lot of places in North County recorded it, like Carlsbad, for example, that had more than 120 people said, I felt that earthquake. Why would isolated pockets feel it more than other places that are closer to the fault?
Would it be the buildings that they're in, maybe?
That's the expert.
Well, it's either, when it comes to the geology, if you have soft rock or sediment, you tend to feel these more strongly. If you're in an old unreinforced structure, a Piron post wood frame structure, something like this, it may shake more. I think you're going to have to do a little more research on this, Gary, and go talk to these people and figure out why one community reports this and others don't, because there's not a lot of difference in the geology up there.
I was just schooled here.
No, I think it's the difference of where you're at, whether you're going to feel it or not.
Could be. But
the blonde is smarter than you think, Don't let the blonde hair fool you.
We wrote recently about the earthquake warning system that they want to create. If something happened on the San Jacinto, is that far enough away for us to get appreciable amounts of time, a warning of 10 seconds or so that we could react?
Sure.
Yeah, 10 seconds, you can take cover.
Or you could drop cover and hold on in 10 seconds.
Yeah, if you knew it was coming.
Yes.
Right. In San Diego, we're far enough away.
Especially for the children in the schools, here, which is what I'm thinking about first.
Okay.
What else? What do you think? What are your predictions for the future?
I don't make predictions.
There's a big one coming. Is a big one coming.
However, we do forecast earthquakes, and that's based on the long-term pattern of what it's done in the past. So the thing to keep in mind, the caveat here, is that when I say the average recurrence interval for these large earthquakes is like 220 years, but they've been as short as 100 years apart and as much as 300 years apart. So they're not as as timed, as perfectly periodic as we would like.
Darn, we can't measure Mother Nature.
I know. So
she's got a mind of her own.
It could be tomorrow, it could be 100 years from now, and the bottom line is we're an earthquake country and we should be prepared for an earthquake.
We are an earthquake country. Yep. Proud to be here, by the way.
And you know that fault really well. Actually, I was out on that fault with you when you were doing some trenching. It's a pretty interesting fault.
It is. It is. And when it moves with a large earthquake, it's going to offset roads by 10 or 12 feet.
Wow.
Yeah, it's going to produce a lot of displacement. It's going to be horizontal.
So are there plates under the earth that are moving this way, right?
No, they're actually moving right laterally.
Okay.
So like this.
Okay.
And same direction as the San Andreas Fault. So the Pacific side, San Diego, is moving northwest relative to North America. And at the rate we're going, Los Angeles will be a suburb of San Francisco in 8 or 10 million years.
Well, what about San Diego?
Well, we're a little bit behind Los Angeles in that respect.
All right. Well, that'll change our weather quite a bit. Huh, Gary?
Yeah, that's what it will do.
Is there such a thing as earthquake? And this is I know this is a dumb question, but these are some of the questions I've had people wanting to know on my social media sites. Is there earthquake weather? Because sometimes when it's like really still, it's like this is perfect earthquake weather.
It's all myth.
Right.
Keep in mind, these large earthquakes start 10 or 12 kilometers, 8 miles down below the ground surface. When they start, they're not caring a bit about the weather.
Yeah, but you would think there'd be some way for us to track that.
Well, people have seriously looked at that, and we have, you know, hundreds of thousands of earthquakes recorded in all kinds of weather, and there's just no correlation. I hate to say that,
it's a big mystery. That's the thing.
It'd be great if we could, but
we talked about this before. People have said to me, "Where can I move in Southern California where I'm not on or close to a fault?" Isn't the reality is that anywhere you are, you're
what about
either
Palm
on
Springs?
it or near it.
Palm Springs is right on the San Andreas.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. Probably in San Diego County, the East County, you know, El Cajon, Crest, Alpine is about the farthest you could get from an active fault.
And those are the faults.
You just increased property value there, buddy.
Well, he said active fault. Go back in time. The Northridge earthquake, that was a blind thrust fault that wasn't even known to exist.
That's true. But that's in an area of deep sedimentary rock that's being shortened. You know, the whole area is being crunched. East County here is not that kind of environment. We don't have a big blind thrust.
What do we have on the coastal, North Coastal and all the coastal
We have,
areas?
our favorite fault is the Rose Canyon Fault.
And where does that?
It comes on shore, actually runs all the way down the coast. It's the southern extension of the Newport-Inglewood Fault that produced the 1933 earthquake that led to the Field Act and our building codes, our modern building codes. And it comes back on shore in La Jolla. And we've studied it. We know block by block where that fault runs.
Wow.
Yeah, we have not published a detailed map of that.
Yeah, because that would depreciate property
we don't want to go
values.
there. We don't want to talk about that. But it runs up over Mount Soledad and then comes down on the east side of Mission Bay.
Wow.
And down through Old Town and then splays through the downtown region into three faults that go offshore. They go through San Diego Bay and they cross, one of them is the Silver Strand Fault that crosses Silver Strand. One of them is the Coronado Fault, which is on Coronado Island. And the other is the Spanish Bight Fault, which separates what was North Island and Coronado Island. It was called Spanish Bight. It was a waterway. They filled it in now, but the fault goes right through there.
That is so interesting. So many people don't know that. Talk about a natural easement. It should be in there. They do a title search. You are sitting on a fault. But I heard you didn't mention Del Mar.
We both live in Del Mar.
We both live neighbors.
The fault is offshore from Del Mar, and you're, I think, about 6 or 8 kilometers from the fault. So if it ruptured, yeah, you'd feel it very, very strongly.
Well, Tom, if it ruptured offshore in a big way, could it generate a tsunami that would affect the coast?
Again,
good question.
The Rose Canyon Fault is another one of these strike-slip faults. So they don't produce much displacement of the seafloor. If you want a tsunami, you need to displace the seafloor. What you can do with strike-slip faults offshore and even onshore is you can trigger landslides. And then the landslide will produce a tsunami. But there aren't very many landslide or submarine slide scars out there. So that does happen, but along the Southern California coast it's fairly rare. So the chances of that happening are much less than the chance of the earthquake itself.
This is exciting stuff. What can you tell our viewers, like what can they do to prepare to be as safe as they can? Because I'm sure when you have little shakes like this, it reminds people, yeah, this is a big mystery and this could happen at any time.
Well, we should all have, several days worth of water and food and these types of things put aside. Flashlights, spare batteries, way to cook food. I have a camping stove because we go camping. I'm a geologist, we go out in the field. But everyone should have some way to deal with maybe a cutoff of services for several days because we don't really know what's going to happen if you have a large earthquake, a magnitude 8 on the San Andreas Fault. It's going to cut the California aqueduct. Well, we have water storage in San Diego County, so we're not going to be cut off from our own water supplies, but maybe the delivery is going to be temporarily halted because the power grid will go down or something.
Or it's going to be contaminated, you never know.
Right, we don't know the full extent of what will happen. We know we're going to work very hard to get these things back online very quickly, but everyone should be prepared for 2 or 3 days or more of a little bit of isolation and not have to worry about running to the store for food. And water. You should always have water and just have your earthquake preparedness kit.
And your iodine pills.
And your iodine pills. Well.
And your...
Obviously, you know what my garage looks like.
Well, also in context, I was thinking about, you have 4 children.
Yeah.
Do you have a system set out where they contact you by, say, text message to let you know they're all right if they feel a shaker?
Yeah, that's funny that you say that because 2 of them are out of the house. I only have 2 left. So
But are they in Southern California?
I forgot about the two other ones. I need to get a new plan going. Out of sight, out of mind. I'm joking, obviously.
Just send them to LA, so they'll be right there at the epicenter?
No, I know a lot of people are going to try to find their way to my house because they know they'll survive for a while. All right, well, great news and great information. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Do you have any other questions, Gary?
I think that's it.
Great stuff.
He and I are going to talk further. There'll be more on the UT about this.
Yes, and when can we expect to see that?
In the morning.
In the morning. Yay.
And online tonight.
Online, always. You always update your information. Always. News 24/7. Thank you so much. Thank you, Gary. We got to take a quick break. Prime Time will be right back.